Well, hello, everyone. I'm speaking in staccato today, all day long. So, hello and welcome to another edition of Learn, Rant, Laugh, a smart drivel podcast with your hosts, John Allenthal and Kurt Schneider. Hello, John.
Okay, so I'm not having this discussion with you if you're going to speak in staccato the whole time. And I also want to point out, and you can go back and listen to the recording, that you developed a British accent somewhere along the way during your staccato presentation there.
Wouldn't you, mate? If you're speaking in staccato, I think you have to have a little bit of a lilt. And a lilt is something
You've
that
got a
goes
little
along
bit
with
of
the
a
Brits.
lilt. So listen, on behalf of our listeners everywhere, stop it.
You know what I read this morning? Some guy in World War II, some English guy, killed a German with a longbow. He went into battle with
Because
a
of
sword.
Agincourt?
Yeah. He went into battle with a sword and a longbow, and he played the bagpipes before he went into battle.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Was he on his own or was he part of some sort of platoon?
No, he's part of a platoon, but he was the only one in a platoon that had a longbow.
I thought that military operations have, some uniformity to it because you don't really want freelancers out there.
Well, he was a freelancer, and then he was one of the first people to bring surfing to Great Britain because he learned it in Australia after the war.
That was a big part of the Vietnam War from the movies we've seen. They did a bunch of surfing. Kurt, the last episode, you made a point about the Pan Am smile. I don't recall your actual point, but it led to a discussion of how brands can own a thing, which may not have been your point, but it did lead to that discussion. And I heard from one of our listeners, a longtime listener, Michael Borchetta, an old friend of mine, who wanted to add two things. One was the Jeep Wave. Are you familiar with the Jeep Wave?
I am.
In case our listeners are not, would you like to share the Jeep Wave?
Apparently, and I didn't realize this till I was with a friend who had one, because there was a time about 20 years ago, John, that in the town where you and I both lived, every single family had a Suburban and a Jeep. And all the guys drove their Jeeps thinking they were cool. And when you drive the Jeep, you wave if you see someone else in a Jeep.
Right. So
It's
you're
like some
referring
sort of
to a
weird
Wrangler.
solidarity.
It's a Wrangler specific. I don't think it applies to all Jeeps, but the Wrangler. And you have your hand on the steering wheel and you sort of put up two fingers, and that's the Jeep Wave. So he wanted to add that to the list. He also wanted to correct or put a fine point on something we did talk about. We talked about Kool-Aid and Jim Jones and the mass suicide in Guyana and the birth of the expression, they drank the Kool-Aid, because they literally did, and they all died.
But they didn't.
What Michael told us is Kool-Aid got screwed because it wasn't Kool-Aid. It was Flavor Aid and some other stuff too. But I guess Kool-Aid being the category killer, the Xerox, the Kleenex, it got tagged with being this agent of mass suicide and the birth of the expression. So I wanted to clear that up before we went any further.
Did you mean to say category killer, or was that just...
What did I say? I did not mean that. I can speak in double entendre even when I don't mean it.
Another longtime listener, Stu, sent me...
Stu has no last name because he likes to remain anonymous.
Stu Holberg sent me a picture of his
No longer anonymous.
adorable baby daughter, Hannah Faye, and underneath it, someone had written to him, "Oh, she's a Gerber baby."
There's another one. It's
That's why
good to
he
own
sent
a
it to
thing
me.
like that.
That's why he sent, because he said, I listened to...
No, I got it, Kurt. I thank you for the little bridge there. But as much as some people do think segues are for kids, I did actually get that. Speaking of segues, let's get into today's episode.
What was the thing that was for kids when we were...
Tricks.
Tricks. Oh, you know what? And I ran them advertising for Tricks. You think
And why are you asking me?
Because I forgot my mind. I'm drinking coffee out of a Smart Drivel mug.
That's right. I should get my mug out.
If you think it's coffee. I don't know.
You know what? If it weren't coffee, I feel a little bit better about your staccato opening, because
it's coffee, baby.
I too am drinking coffee, but this is, I'm going to use my Smart Drivel mug next time, because now that we're on video, it is the right time. Now, a negative of being on video is I visited the dermatologist this past week, and he likes to burn and cut things. He's a cutter, and he burned with his freezing thing, something on the bridge of my nose. So I feel like the camera is focused right on the bridge of my nose. So don't
But,
look there.
but guess what, John? He won the little Indianapolis 500 on a bicycle that was he duct taped his feet to the pedal so he wouldn't get off.
What are you talking about?
You said he was a cutter. You never saw Breaking Away?
Dios mío.
The greatest
Kurt,
movie of all time besides
it is a
Princess.
great movie. It is a great movie. And you want to, I mean, I know that most of our listeners, viewers are new to the video thing. In fact, we need to promote it so that people actually look at it. But what's up with your hair?
What do you mean? It's great.
You got that big, high, you trying to turn into Conan O'Brien?
No, I'm trying to turn him into Jimmy Neutron.
Oh, there you go. You're well on your way. All right. I learned something this week.
Oh,
In fact,
Dios mío, it's about time. I mean, I learn something probably every 45 seconds. You learn one thing in a
but
week.
you forget 3 things every 45 seconds, so you're at a net loss.
Just like beforehand when you were telling me a story and I was like, do you know how I know that, John? You just told me that story yesterday.
That's funny. That's a funny twist there.
I'm going to give you a Pan Am smile.
Yeah. Well, that's a funny way to, I think they call that projection in the trade. You ready?
Context is very important, by the way. I was thinking about that today.
Well,
You know why?
also is the truth is also kind of a big deal. So you didn't provide any context to our listeners, and you also lied.
But here's context. Today, it's going to be 50 degrees and it's early March now that we're doing this. 50 degrees in March is warm as hell. People are going to be in shorts and t-shirts. 50 degrees in October is freezing, yet
Where's
50
context?
is the same.
Today is International Women's Day.
Wonderful. I love
Are
women.
you an international woman?
No, but I love women.
All right, so let's start there. I have developed a quiz for you, Kurt. Bit of a personality kind of test.
No, I'm ready.
You ready?
Yep.
Have you ever thought about what it must be like or what it might be like to be a woman?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, I thought you were going to go through all the questions.
I am, but you're welcome to editorialize because that's what we do here.
Somewhere along the evolutionary cycle,
Just don't editorialize too long.
or somewhere along the evolutionary cycle, women came out knowing everything. They know far more than men about everything. If
So
you
your
ask
desire,
them,
it's your desire to, when you've considered what it must be like to be a woman, you think of it in terms of an omniscient thought.
I would like to be
all-knowing.
omniscient. I would also like to not do the stupid things that my Y chromosome makes me do.
You would basically be inert then. You would basically, all right. So listen, Kurt, if it were medically safe and reversible, would you ever try living as a woman for a year just to see what it's like?
Absolutely.
Wow. If you liked it, would you consider switching back and forth every few years just to keep life interesting?
Absolutely.
So I'm looking at some notes here because this is a carefully constructed.
By the way, I'd also, if it was medically safe and I could come back, I'd like to be a dog too.
What is it about a dog's life that you find so curious?
Everyone loves you and you run around and you get fed and someone picks up your poop and you sleep a lot. It's kind of fun.
All right, Kurt, everybody loves you. You get fed fine and you poop into a machine that removes it. So in what way is your life not dog-like?
I take a lot of naps. I guess
And you sleep, and you sleep a lot too. So you are basically living a dog's life, Kurt. So congratulations, your life is a dog, which was a movie, a Swedish
my
movie.
mom's favorite movie.
All right, looking at my notes here. Imagine a world where changing sex was as easy as changing outfits. Would you mostly stick with one or experiment from time to time?
I definitely experiment. But you know why, John? I think it's important for you to understand people and the world and civilization to see things from different angles. And if you could legitimately see something through different eyes, shame on you if you don't.
I think you and I are both card-carrying members of liberal arts colleges, so we certainly believe in understanding a lot of things and therefore the relationships, sometimes surprising relationships between and among things.
I'm worried that AI is taking away our ability to critical think.
There is some early evidence that, just sort of studying people's brains who are heavy users versus not, that it has some impact. Like our brain is constantly rewiring, adapting. So I wouldn't be surprised. Let me see. Um,
Are you going someplace with this, John?
no. Uh,
Okay.
if changing sex actually increased the survival of our species, would that make the idea more appealing, less appealing, or about the same?
Well, I already told you I was really appealed by it, so it's the
Yeah, right.
same.
That question was superfluous. Well, here's one. Do you think society would function better, worse, or about the same if humans could change sex multiple times during their lives?
Much better. But the one thing that we didn't talk
Just
about was
basically because we could understand each other
yeah,
better.
the one thing this is all from a philosophical level, because the one thing is how you would actually have sex and what would happen with your spouse or your partner. And do they change too so that you keep a heterosexual thing? How does that work? I don't know.
Couple more questions, and then I will give you the results of this quiz. When something irritates you, how does it manifest in your body?
I get a tingling in the back of my neck like the little kid on Stranger Things. I don't know. Does it irritate me?
Yeah, when
Uh,
you're irritated, do you turn it into something good, or are you just sort of? I'm just wondering how it flows through you, Kurt.
well, I talk about it, and the problem with society, like I'm going to in my rant coming up.
Like no one's ever heard you say that before.
Exactly.
Okay, Kurt, I'm going to move on from the questions
Yeah.
because you've been very clear that you think it's a net positive personally and a net positive to society for people to be able to change sex back and forth because it makes for a fuller life experience and better mutual understanding. Is that a fair recap? Yeah.
Yes. What is the expression? Walk a mile in my moccasins.
Yeah, or in your high heels in this case.
Exactly. That's the thing that we've been trying to get.
A
It's
big
called.
empathy builder. It's a giant empathy play.
So I think, by the way, empathy is having its day these days because I think it is. I think it
It's
was
having its moment.
it is because I think it was one of these things that just wasn't. It was like in the background. I got stuffed down by the Mad Men era in the United States. You didn't have empathy. You were this and this and this. Empathy is something that is the difference between someone who's like a serial killer and a narcissist and someone who is like a real human being.
I think
Empathy.
empathy's definitely you want to have in I got that column.
We're going to start making t-shirts, you and me. Empathy having its moment.
You
Don't
know
you
what?
ever.
I hope that empathy has this moment. I think it's been fairly persistent throughout human history, but people in power seem to be okay then. So, Kurt, this actually wasn't a personality test. It was actually an attempt to identify what species you are. And there is one species on Earth, one organism that matches the pattern of your answers. It is the oyster.
Mhm.
Oysters actually change sex frequently
Yes.
throughout their lives. Did you know that?
Awesome. I did know that.
What do you mean you knew that?
I knew it.
Well, how can you've never? We've done like 4,000 episodes and we talk about all sorts of bizarre, stupid shit. And you have withheld the fact, despite claiming you know it, that there is one species, one organism that flips back and forth between sex throughout its life.
John,
Why would you possibly hold that back?
episode 119. I told you all about
It
oysters.
is
They
it
come
is
back and forth.
there it is not plausible that this would not come out of your mouth. You've
Episode
said so many things
119.
you've said so many things repeatedly that if you had a fresh thought, I don't know why you would have held it back.
Episode 119, John. I already told you about this.
So just remember, you're not a man, you're basically a shellfish, Kurt.
Good.
So one of the reasons they do this is because the way in which they reproduce is not so precise. The female just lets out tens of millions of eggs, and hopefully eggs and sperm, they both sort of release it and hopefully they bump into each other and there is a mating, because otherwise you're not going to have a continuation of the species. So the fact that males can become females allows for the release of more eggs. So it is fundamental based on how they reproduce to the continuation of the oyster species.
I think that's fascinating. I ask you a question.
No.
Do they taste different if they're a man at that point or a male or female at that point.
Oh, you mean if you ate them?
Yeah, I love oysters. I know you don't eat oysters, but they are
I used
fantastic.
to,
I
and
know.
I used to eat them. I never really liked them. They have one positive attribute from a culinary perspective for me, or at least they did when I ate them. They are an excellent substrate for cocktail sauce with horseradish. And I'm pretty much good with anything you can put cocktail sauce with horseradish on top of. Because
Episode 3, you told us that.
because I'm sure we had an in-depth conversation about condiments, yet you withheld the fact. By the way, oysters came up another time this week, and then we'll get to what you've learned. I'm listening to a podcast on the history of Rolex, and they, of course, have the Oyster watch, and it was named back in the early 1900s when Rolex was able to perfect a winding mechanism that kept the watch innards to be completely free from environmental stuff. We always say water, but dust is a big deal, things like that. So they're able to make basically an airtight, watertight, environment-tight seal. And that's why they called it the Oyster, because I'm guessing the Oyster does that too when it closes its bivalves into nighttime.
That was a great episode. It was on a show called
Acquired.
Acquired.
Yeah,
Yes.
highly recommend Acquired if you happen to have 4 or 5 hours flying around.
Yes, their episode on Costco was great. The episode on M&M's
Fascinating.
was great. They've had LVMH was terrific.
What did you say after Costco? Before LVMH?
M&M,
M&M. I haven't
Mars,
heard. I haven't
Mars.
heard that one yet.
Oh, great.
But I did. Costco was incredible. I mean, the number of retail concepts that these folks invented.
John, I was in Portugal a couple weeks ago, and we went to this market in Porto, and they had fresh oysters there. And we got Vin Verde, which is green wine. It's basically white wine, very light. It's almost got effervescence, right? It's right on the cusp. And we sat in the sun and had oysters and a Vino Verde.
Effervescence is a Kurt Schneider word.
All right. So I think that was excellent. And by the way, you and I were at an event years ago and in Westport, Connecticut. And I asked the guy, I said, how fresh are these oysters? You know, there was a bunch of different stands. And the guy said, what time is it? I said, 6 o'clock. He said, pulled them out about an hour ago. And I said, tell me about these beds, where they came from. He said, actually, my family was granted these beds by King George III in the late 18th century or mid to late 18th century. And I found the deed and I'm basically resuscitating them. And in fact, where we live in Connecticut used to be the oyster capital of the world.
Yeah, but I don't think you can eat things that come out of that water. I guess we still. So where were these oyster beds
Right
based?
on Island Sound, right off of Norwalk.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought for a long time we couldn't eat the things that came out of
Of course we
there.
can. What are you crazy?
They're incredible. By the way, oyster beds are incredibly dense. I mean, the number of oysters you can pack in a very small space. I actually had
Oysters used to be sold in New York City in the late 19th century for like a penny, and you could go anywhere in New York City and just boom, boom, boom until we ate too many. All right.
10 square feet can hold 50 oysters. So I should have asked you if you like being densely packed with other humans, and you probably would have said yes.
I do. I love that.
Further evidence that you are basically a crustacean.
John, I'm going to read you something that I learned. Now, this probably doesn't engender a lot of conversation, but I thought it was interesting.
Oh,
John,
perfect.
you like history.
Perfect for your solo podcast. Yes, Kurt, I like, no one asks setup questions better than you, Kurt.
John, you like America.
Yes.
You like to know about presidents.
I do like American presidential history.
There was one day, John, March 5th, March 4th,
That's a day that will live in infamy. Not really.
1849.
Okay, March 4th. I'm going to write this down, Kurt. March 4th, 1849.
Where the United States
Gold Rush.
did not have a president.
Oh,
Zero.
very cool. That's kind of interesting.
For one day.
But isn't it automatic when the president is indisposed that the vice president automatically steps in, but that didn't happen for some reason. Was it a communication failure?
Nope.
There was no vice president at the time.
Right?
We had no vice president for a period of time, therefore no backup.
Nope.
But third in line would be like Speaker of the House, right?
And the third in line is I'm going to tell you exactly what it is. It's the Senate President pro tempore. Okay, so I'll explain to you.
Third in line is not Speaker of the House?
No. Okay.
You think it's changed over the years?
All right, can I tell you what happened?
Well, you said it wasn't conducive to conversation, so I'm trying to force conversation.
President, there was a law back then until it changed in 1933 that the president's administration expired at noon on March 4th every day, John, every year, whenever it expired, right? March 4th.
Okay.
Now, March 4th in 1849 happened to fall on a Sunday. Incoming President Zachary Taylor was a devout Christian and would not take the
Take the oath. He's the founder of Chick-fil-A, right?
on the Christian Sabbath. And so, supposedly, what happened was, and therefore his vice president did not take the oath, but the others had expired. He did not take the oath till the next day.
That's very
So,
interesting.
and this is just myth, but it was fun myth. So therefore they said, wait, if there's no president and no vice president, then Senator David Rice Hutchinson from Missouri, who was the Senate President pro tempore, was second in line of succession at the time behind the vice president, and he was president. And in fact, he never said that he did this, but everyone else gave him this, and even Ripley's, believe it or not, did it. And on his tombstone, it said, President of the United States for one day.
That's great. I mean, he should be counted when we do presidential numbers. If he was a legitimate president, why
But then
isn't
they
he?
actually went and realized that he actually wasn't, because his role as Senate President pro tempore also
Right.
expired at noon.
Oh,
So there wasn't, and he didn't get reelected or re-put in till the next day himself.
I'm gonna just look up if the succession
Okay, but then I know
has ever
something
changed.
else, which is also interesting. So later on, ready for this, John?
Yes.
In 1877, Rutherford B. Hayes came in for Ulysses S. Grant. Now, he said, it's going to happen on a Sunday, so I want to be sworn in on Saturday, March 3rd.
What did the Constitution say at that time?
At that point, we actually had two presidents for 2 days.
So he was interesting. If a presidential decision needed to be made, you'd have
Right.
to go with the sitting president.
For 24 hours. Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
It is. I never knew that. That is very interesting. It reminds me of
Something I
discussion.
learned, John.
And now I've learned, and our listeners and viewers have learned, which is excellent. I do recall us, because we have delved into U.S. presidential history a few times, learning that there have actually been 9 capitals of the United States. And most people are very surprised, like Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And it's just, I guess, during war, was it, I assume, the Revolutionary War? Was it the Civil War? Must have been the Revolutionary War.
Wasn't the Revolutionary War, John?
We didn't have that government yet.
There you go.
So it must have been during the Civil War that the president and cabinet were kind of on the move. So wherever they laid their heads became the capital. Well, that is interesting. And I did look up that the presidential line of succession has changed multiple times through constitutional amendments and federal laws to address continuity of government. Major changes occurred in 1886, 1947, and 2006. I wonder what happened in 2006. Do you
By
know,
the
Kurt?
way, 1947 is the year that India got its independence from Britain. And if you go to an Indian restaurant, it's actually good beer, 1947.
Is that why there's a
That's what
33 on the
Americans
back?
get wrong, by the way. They drink wine, white wine with Indian food, beer.
It has to be really cold, though.
1947. It's good.
So in 2006, the amendment added the Secretary of Homeland Security to the line of succession. You want to
Oh, boy.
guess? You want to guess where the secretary falls?
Which secretary?
The Secretary of Homeland Security that was
Sixth.
added to the line of
Sixth.
18th.
Oh, kind of like Meghan Markle.
Is she 18th in line to the US
No,
presidency?
but you know who's 18th in line currently, or eighth in line currently
Harry?
for the
They're kids.
Andrew Mountbatten Windsor?
Yeah, I don't think he's gonna get there.
Taken
Yeah,
away.
he was
All right,
taken
we need
away.
a
All right.
rant, John. We spent most of the time on learning, which is good. So we're going to be very quick.
Look, learning's good. All right, to be quick. So you and I are fortunate enough to find ourselves from time to time in really nice restaurants, yes?
I think we need to do this, John. Yes, I like
Yeah.
America.
So I was in a really nice restaurant this week, and it was the kind of restaurant, these restaurants, the service is excellent, very attentive, and they think of all the details, and the space is beautiful and the menu is creative, and in this case, the view was fantastic. I mean, everything you know what? Whether you like it or not, everything was decided thoughtfully.
Did they take the
Everything's
little knife to get your crumbs off for you?
all that kind of high-end stuff. In fact, they even had little blocks like you put your chopsticks on, but they had them for our silverware, so our silverware was never. So it was one of those kinds of places. They thought of everything except for one thing. And this is actually fairly common in my experience. They spent no time thinking about the flippin' acoustics of the restaurant. Beautiful space. We couldn't hear a damn thing. And it's not just because we're old. It was so loud. There was nothing done. There was no
Are
carpeting.
so old, boomer zoomer.
That's fine. But I think, have you never been to a nice restaurant where it was just too loud to really have a polite conversation?
I was out Friday night to a restaurant. We were in a townhouse in New York, a very fancy restaurant. And there were two tables right next to us in the window of, they happen to be groups of four women. And boy, were they loud.
I get that my hearing is not what it used to be. And exactly. So, but there's no way that even a younger pair of ears could have had a comfortable conversation with their table mates. And I was looking around, there was nothing done with the ceiling to absorb sound. Obviously, I understand why you wouldn't want to put carpeting down, but maybe some rugs. And it was an open space. It could have been divided up with not even full to the ceiling dividers to create. There was no attempt to muffle nothing.
Yeah,
Other
no,
than that, it was lovely. Other than the fact that I couldn't talk to my three dinner mates without screaming, it was a very nice dinner.
I do agree with you, actually. So that's a rant that, even though you're showing your age, I will agree with. And I don't
That's
usually
because
agree
we're
with
the
your age.
same age, Kurt.
Well, you're 4 months older. I have kind of a repeat rant, but this rant is, I call it
Yet
the,
you're telling us you knew about Oyster's sex change for the first time, but you're going to
episode
repeat a
119.
rant.
This is sort of the great inflation for responses. And this just ticks me off
A
these days.
great inflation for responses. Yes. Academics have covered this phenomenon for years.
You know, great inflation, right? Like, raise your hand if you didn't get an A, you got an A, right? It happens in colleges now, like
I thought you said great, like
grade. So,
grade
like, you
inflation.
go to
Okay.
college now, and the median grade is like an A minus. Grade inflation, okay? But this has now happened to responses, and I think it's creating no place for people to go. It's creating a whole generation, not generation, a whole society of the boy who cried wolf.
Is this the problem with society?
Yeah, you know what it is?
No.
Okay, stop using words like amazing when I email you that, I just licked a stamp. Exclamation point. It's not
You
amazing.
know people who use stamps?
No, okay, whatever. If someone says something like, this morning for breakfast, I had granola and yogurt.
Fantastic.
Incredible. That's not incredible.
Yeah. It's
And
become
there's no
trite.
place for them to go. Where are you going afterwards?
You're
You know
right.
what you
Those
do
words
afterwards?
have lost their meaning because they're overused and they're used in contexts for which they were not originally intended.
And they put them in exclamation points, which I hate, and they put them in capitals, and they add an exclamation point because that's the only place they can go.
Yeah, the
Now,
capitals have to stop.
if you really do this in what are those things I've never used? Emojis. Okay. There is on text. You don't need to heart everything. You don't love it when someone said, I used salt last night in my
You're
bully
right.
base.
That's more of a thumbs up.
Exactly, but you don't need to heart these things. Where do you go from there?
I
You
think for
don't
many people,
love
it's
it.
just an acknowledgement.
Well, then don't do it at a heart. Love, what you've
Let
done is you've diluted heart. You've
You're right.
diluted your response.
Those words have lost their specialness because they're used so commonly and for relatively mundane accomplishments or
Piss me off,
updates.
John. Grade
Well,
inflation for emotions. We're
let
grading
me
the boy who cried wolf. No place for us to go.
let me quote you. I agree with you. Actually,
Why are you saying it? Actually, John, it's
because
like
I
you
was
know me
quoting
dumb.
you, Kurt.
That's when someone says, you're actually funny.
Yeah,
Means I'm normally
because when
not.
I was done with my rant, you were like, I agree with you, actually. Like
Well,
it
because
was
usually I don't agree with you.
okay. You got anything funny that's happened since we last recorded?
This isn't really, well, kind of. I saw a car the other park, and I
Kurt,
started
you
laughing.
have a car, right?
I started laughing because it reminded me of our childhood. It was one of those cars, must have been from the 70s or 60s. And it had that little window in front that was like what do you call that?
Oh, wow.
The wing window. And you
Yeah.
could open it to get like fresh air coming a
I
different
forgot
way.
about those completely.
That was awesome.
Yeah, whatever happened to those?
And it made me
Those
laugh.
were
I'm
great.
like, I remember
You
those.
could tilt that little open, get some fresh air without having your hat blown off.
Fantastic. You could do whatever you want. You felt in control, baby.
What kind of car was it?
It was a Volkswagen. I think it was it wasn't a
Did you
Beetle.
say
It was
Volkswagen?
Volkswagen, the
Okay.
people's wagon.
The People's Wagon. So, yeah,
Made me
I
laugh.
had completely forgotten about those windows. Those are great windows. So, I was having a conversation with 3 friends yesterday,
You like to
driving
talk, right, John?
You've been in a car before, Kurt, right? You have a friend.
You're
So
free.
and because we're all fairly intellectual and we spend most of our time thinking deep thoughts, we were talking about Gilligan's Island, which was a staple for me, and I'm sure you and most people born when we were
Well, it was
born.
only like 27 episodes or so.
There were 3 seasons, 21 episodes each. There are only 63 episodes. I guarantee I've seen each of them at least 10 times. I also guarantee I remember almost none of them.
By the way, do you know that the ages of like Mr. Howell, he's younger than we are now, the actor who played him.
I think Jim Backus, I believe his name was.
But we thought he was so damn old. He's younger than we are now.
Did you make a point change before, a comment about context and 50 degrees now and 50 degrees? That. So a friend made the point, which I did not know, that the series really never had a proper ending because the show was canceled
Right.
abruptly after production had wrapped on the 3rd season. So
John,
the
I
final
shared that in episode 135.
So the what were we talking? Anyway, so there was never like a proper finale or anything. It was
Probably
just
a good thing.
it was probably just
It was the Irish goodbye of finales.
it was basically just a regular episode. They didn't know they were ending. And I said, that's true. Well, I heard that. I said I didn't know that, but there were several movies that were created. In fact, 15 years after the final episode aired, I don't know what it was called, but it was basically Rescue from Gilligan's Island. And we needed that closure. I needed that closure. And they were rescued. And I recall that the castaways had a very difficult time readjusting to life on I guess not the mainland. They probably were in Hawaii. Anyway, their
But
regular
Gilligan
life.
and Skipper aged a lot in between those two guys.
15 years is, well, listen, if you're men of the sea, you're going to, in any event, then there was another movie, I guess, because they had a hard time letting go of the life on the isle. I'm sorry, on the Isle.
Mhm.
And they basically turned Gilligan's Island into some sort of resort. So they got to be back on their island. The third movie is why I bring this up.
Okay.
You, Kurt, of course, were the CEO of the Harlem Globetrotters for many years, 10 years.
You invented the 4-point shot, John.
Oh, and I've told everybody when it comes up on this episode, on this podcast, so there's no reason for you to do it. I mean, it's almost unseemly for you to have to say that you are the inventor of such a transformational.
I said, what about Breakfast at Tiffany's? As I recall, we both kind of liked it.
I don't know what that means.
It's a song.
Right, but why is it related to the 4-point shot? Or
because you said, and I said, and when someone says, and I said, I think, what about Breakfast at Tiffany's? As I recall, we both kind of liked it.
I guess as you're the only person that has that particular synaptic connection, and it's
Oyster,
probably
John.
good.
I'm an oyster.
When you become a female, I wonder if you'll have the same sort of
So what about
brain.
the Harlem Globetrotters, John?
So anyway, in one of the strangest crossover ideas that Hollywood has ever come up with, the final movie was the Harlem Globetrotters meet Gilligan's Island. Or Gilligan's Island? Yeah. So what was the conception of that idea? And not only did someone have the idea, someone along the way must have said, hey, that's a good idea. Let's do it. And then more people actually did it. But the Harlem Globetrotters land on Gilligan's Island. So I think that's funny in both a funny haha and a funny strange way. So it works on both levels. But I only bring it up because of your personal history.
Marijuana was different then.
It was different back then. All right, Kurt. We've learned stuff. We've got some stuff off our chest, and we had a mental chuckle or two. Not a guffaw, but more of a maybe. But it was internal since neither one of us laughed. But
Be an oyster, John. Be an oyster.
That kind of thing. Keep yourself environmentally tight and wait for your sex change to happen.
Look what
We'll be back next time with another episode of Smart Drivel. Check us out on YouTube, or we're going to stop doing the video recording because it's a lot of extra work. But hopefully people will start to find us on YouTube as well.
I'm giving you the Jeep Wave.
The Jeep Wave and Flavor Aid, not Kool-Aid.
Pocalo, Broter. Bye, everyone.
Goodbye, everybody.